The categories settings are where you'll set up the various categories that your users will submit into when they're adding their entries. Now, categories are completely arbitrary. Here in the example page, we have these set up sort of according to mediums, so fine art and photography and graphic and illustration, sculpture, but you can set these up really according to however you want. You could set these up to age. For example, you could have junior or senior. Maybe you want to set them up according to a geographic location. So really setting up your categories is completely up to you, but that's the first thing the users will select when they're adding a submission is what category does the submission belong to. The reason you'll want to add categories is so that you can then filter your categories by submission. You can also limit juror access to specific categories. So maybe I have a person that is a photography expert and he's only going to be jurying the photography category. So I can do some permission settings that way. And so you'll want to kind of think about organizing your categories, but they are really completely arbitrary and up to you how you want to do that. If you do have multiple categories, you're also able to jury your submissions according to the category. So for example, down here in the jury settings, I'm just going to come to the jury estimator tool, and you can see that I can jury in or jury out submissions per category with different threshold values for each category. So having categories gives you that flexibility of being able to jury in and jury out differing amounts of submissions per varying thresholds per category. Now, if you just have a single category, that's okay as well. You can just have one single category and call it default category or entries or something like that if you don't want to set up categories. Subcategories are completely optional. So notice that my fine art category has subcategories of oil and acrylic and charcoal. And that's simply if you want to further allow your users to select specific subcategories within a main category. Now, in order to show you how the categories works, I'm going to go back to the submission form and then preview the form. So I'm going to come back here to submissions. I'm going to preview the submission form here, and you'll see that the first thing they select is the categories. Your users can always click this to get the descriptions of those that you set up. But notice that when I select a category, for example, fine art, the subcategory will populate with only the subcategories that are underneath the fine art. If I switch this over to photography, notice that the options here are now only the subcategories of photography. If you don't have any subcategories at all, the subcategory field here will completely disappear and it won't be an option for your users to select. Let's move back over here to the call settings and back to categories, and I'll show you you can simply add one of those by clicking Add New Category. You'll give your category a name and an abbreviation and a description. Again, those descriptions show up if the user clicks that little info box. The abbreviation field is only used internally and on display tags and print tags optionally. I'll show you how that works shortly as well. When you add a subcategory, you'll notice that's very similar. The only difference is that you first choose what the parent category is for the subcategory. So maybe in photography, I want to add a new one that's called digital. So I can add a digital one here and call this D, and I'll just call this the digital subcategory. And I'm going to add that new subcategory, and you'll see now that underneath photography, I have that new one of digital. Okay, now, as I mentioned, you can limit your jurors according to category as well. So this is a bit more of an advanced feature, but if you have many jurors that are going to be jurying your show and you want to have specific jurors work on specific categories, you can do that underneath the jury settings and then down underneath jury user permissions. So you can notice here, here's all the jurors, and I can select which categories I want to allow a specific juror to access. I can have this juror can now access graphic design and illustration. If you want a juror to be able to access all of your categories, you simply leave this blank and don't customize it. You'll definitely want to watch the video tutorial on the jury user category permissions, as there's a few things for advanced jurying that are important here. And if you need to edit any category at any time, you can simply come in here and click the edit button and update the verbiage or the abbreviation and whatnot. You don't want to delete a category after you've received submissions into that category, as it would then delete all of those submissions. They would all be orphaned. So if you need to modify a category that already has submissions filed underneath it, instead use the edit button instead of the delete button. The last thing I'll show you here is how the abbreviation is used. So if you add an abbreviation and you come over here to the submissions, so I'm going to come over here to submissions. and I'm going to click the print icon here. Now, when I click the print icon, you'll notice that this one has the R12 number. R is the category abbreviation, and 12 is the submission ID. So that's how those abbreviations are used. You'll notice here that the submission ID on the left, so this one's 3. So if I was to click on this one, it's going to be PHO3 because I did the abbreviation of PHO for the photography category. So that's how those abbreviations are used internally. You can also use those abbreviations optionally when you're doing your display tags. So under the settings, I'll come down in here to the settings for the display tags, quickly preview these so you can see the tags. Notice the same thing here. PHO10 means photography ID 10.